Today on the Idiot's Guide. All right, let's get real. This isn't the most glamorous topic, but it's one of the most important. We're talking about the final life stage, death and inheritance. What do we leave behind for the people we care about most? Whether it's a legacy of love or a stack of unpaid bills. Your early financial choices shape how this story ends. So today, we're going to break down the big things you can do to make sure your loved ones are set up for success, the common financial missteps to avoid, and how to leave behind more than just memories. I'm your host, Adam Richardson, aka The Profit Hacker, and I'm joined by the man in charge, Mr. Joe Haslam. Welcome to the Idiot's Guide. Okay, so I think, I hope I'm not qualified to talk really much into this subject other than, you talk about there's individuals who do like estate planning and that kind of stuff where you're like, okay, well, like this is the casket that you want. And I'm guessing what estate planning does, but it's probably more about, trusts and wills and those sorts of things. And that's definitely something we may address in this, but more so like in this sense, I think just like our last episode, we were talking like from the context of our audience hopefully isn't in this realm at all either, but
we don't have ghosts watching.
I don't know.
I thought you were going down the road of, I'm not qualified to talk about this because I'm not dead. And then I was going to go all M. Night Shyamalan and say, I've been a ghost this whole time.
I just watched the new Beetlejuice movie, and like that was kind of interesting. Like the twists, obviously Beetlejuice is based on seeing dead people, and like that. It was okay. Anyway, that's a different topic for a different time. Yeah. But anyway, so right now it's early choices that make lasting impact. It's start planning now, even though you're hoping it's not to plan like, next Tuesday is the day that happens. I think a few episodes ago, I was really kind of dark and gloomy about it, where I said, you're not guaranteed tomorrow. So there's always the possibility, but realistically, what we're talking about is you're at the tail end of your years. You're at the tail end of your golden years, and you don't just want to poof up and smoke and leave a whole pile of problems for everybody to deal with. There are things you can put in place now that help so that when poof happens, you don't just, it's not a giant question mark for a lot of the things that, that could potentially become problematic once you're not in the picture anymore. Once you've gone to the great beyond,
Yeah, death is an important stage to plan for because it is a part of our financial life. Everyone will die. And it's a matter of what do we do with that? And how do we make sure that when that happens, because it is inevitable, as much as these weird fringe individuals are trying to fight death, it will always happen. We have to know what's going to happen. And when you've got loved ones, you've got to make sure that they are taken care of because death is expensive. Death is very expensive.
Yep.
You talked about caskets, burial grounds. You want to talk about the funeral. You've got to talk about, if they're in a hospital, if they need hospice care, if there's, a lot of things that are going to be needed as part of this death process that is very expensive.
Yeah.
And if you're not careful with it, you can end up causing your family a lot of financial distress with your death. And so that's where, you've got to think about that and plan for it. Mm-hmm. How are you going to dispose of all of your worldly objects? Because if you're not careful with that, that could create family squabbles. And now you've got conflicting family and, your death has now caused a rift among your children and grandchildren or other relatives.
And hopefully, I mean, this isn't for everybody, but most people, by the time they are that age, have experienced at some capacity that experience where you go, okay, well, grandma passed away, and and she left all of this stuff, and I really want that picture, and I really want this lamp, and I really want that grandpa's bowling ball collection, I don't care what it is, it becomes so materialistically wartime for family. My wife's family has 10 siblings. And so imagine 10 tribes getting together, parsing out all of the stuff that was left behind. And it was a nightmare of a mess.
Well, and talking about starting planning now, my former grandmother-in-law was very smart about this. She knew that there were certain family members that were going to try to come in and take everything because they were very materialistic. So every Christmas, she found things that she wanted to go to certain people, and she gave those out as the Christmas gifts. And so that was her way. I mean, she didn't need these things anymore. They were going to be part of her, what she was going to be giving to people. But to make sure that it was never contested, she gave it to them early.
My mom did that with her mother's things. So
yeah,
a little bit different, but preemptively, I'm starting to get that stuff from my mom now, where I'm I didn't want this. Yeah. And so,
but yeah, it's that idea of when you start planning.
Thank you. Okay.
You make sure that those things are passed down to the people that you want them passed down to.
Yes.
I have a pair of my former grandfather-in-law's cufflinks because I was very close to him, and because I never had grandfathers growing up, and so I was very close with him, and she wanted to make sure that I got those. I'm not a family member or anything of them, blood family or anything, so she wanted to make sure, so she gave it as a Christmas gift to make sure that those things were passed on the way that she wanted to. It's little things like that to make sure that you're making sure that as part of the inevitability, that things are handled the way that they need to be handled. And you can be sensitive about it. You can be straightforward about it. But just making sure that it's being done and planned for early and well in advance.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, starting early means you have more time to for the growth and fewer headaches later when you're trying to sort out your stuff. And realistically, if you procrastinate, if you don't have that forward thinking where you're Merry Christmas, Happy Birthday, both at the same day, here's a box full of stuff, then that's going to lead to panic later when either you're trying to sort out your estate yourself before that moment ticks down, or you're passing that responsibility on to a loved one, and that's just, I don't know. For me personally, I don't want to do that. And I think about the stuff at home, and hopefully it's not a tomorrow thing for me. Hopefully I have a few more years on Earth, but if I look at what I have even now and I go holy crap, they're in for a whole heap of trouble trying to get rid of this stuff. Mainly my guitar collection.
Yeah. And if this stage in life comes early, so we've been talking about a lot of different stages of life. If this comes early, in the midst of some earlier stages, hopefully it doesn't, but no one's guaranteed tomorrow. It's important to have those things in place early, like having a will, having life insurance, because you may not be ready earlier in life for this stage to happen, because you're short by 40 years from when it should be happening naturally. Yeah. And so you missed out on those 40 years, and there are ways to step in, make sure there are wills, make sure there's life insurance, things like that, so that if it happens early, your family is still well taken care of. So
yeah, when we first started this series, we talked about this, where it was, planting the seed is the earlier you start that, the bigger the tree can be.
Right.
And if you plant the seed too late, you're going to have this little sapling that's just barely there and holding on. And like that's a really difficult thing to really put on the rest of your family to handle.
Right.
So it's okay if you're starting as early as you feel like you want to do. Is there's never really an earlier moment. Like, I don't really want to encourage my 14-year-old son to be like, I can't wait. Like I want to start planning now. But at the same time, I want to be like, I'm so proud of him. He's so responsible, like.
Personally, the earliest, the better.
Honestly, you're instilling really, really good habits that will strengthen every other stage of your life.
I've talked to my children about death. Yeah. And, about, eventualities and, the necessities and things like that, so that they know. I mean, I haven't gone into great detail, but they know I have a end of life sheet essentially that has all the username, passwords, all those kinds of things, so that, if something were to happen,
yeah.
I mean, they know where everything is. They know the life insurance. They know where, all of the necessary documents are to make sure that everything happens.
There's in the military, so for VA benefits and things like that, they have what's called survivor benefits. So if something were to happen to me, my wife would have survivor benefits. Well, it's usually a whirlwind of paperwork just to make sure that happens. Like it's there, it's available.
Yeah.
But it's really challenging if you don't have all of that stuff together. So we have what's called, like, it's kind of like a go bag, basically. We have a file that if that happens, that file gets pulled out and we go straight to the VA, and that is all of the information that they would need to make sure the survivor benefits are put in place immediately. So, like that's a good thing to do. That's a military aspect, but it kind of in the same sense is I want to have a go bag for my family rather than it be, something where they're trying to put all the pieces together and sort this out and figure it out the best they can with limited things. Well, that you can't start early enough for that.
Yeah.
And but it's also like thinking just the simple steps, starting saving, investing in something where it's consistent, and, making sure that you're regularly looking over your financial goals to make sure that they are what you are hoping and projecting for.
Yeah. When your kids were younger, you probably established a college fund. Well, later on in life, establish a coffin fund so that you've got plenty of money set aside for that coffin. Well, I mean, there's no problem with setting aside a coffin fund. It's part of inevitability. Death is more inevitable than your kids going to college, to be honest. And so
I'm gonna go the affordable route and just get incinerated.
I plan on a natural death. No embalming, none of that. But I mean, those are the things that you want to think about, you want to plan about, you want to talk about, so that everyone knows.
There's a joke that says every once in a while I cook with my grandfather. It's just people complain about the ash flavor. It's the dark.
Oh, that's so wrong.
If you're enjoying the episode and thinking about the legacy you want to leave behind, not just for your loved ones, but for the future generations, don't forget to help us out. Hit that subscribe, hit that button, or hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Give us a like. If today's tips got you inspired, leave us a comment and share your thoughts. We'd love to hear what we'd love to hear is what's one thing you hope to pass on to your family or your loved ones. Maybe it's a financial lesson, a treasured memory, or that secret chili recipe. Share it in the comments. Your ideas might just inspire someone else's legacy or a video idea. So subscribe, like, and let us know what matters to you most. Together, we can build a community focused on leaving behind more than just dollars and cents. So, what are some pitfalls or oops moments I think that we kind of take for granted in this situation. I mean, like we can obviously say the worst case scenarios, but there are some things that might not be that devastating. There might not be worst case scenarios, but it still adds to the stress of that thing. Or, you know, you say the underestimating the cost of a coffin, or just the end of life costs. Because if I want to be cremated, there's a pretty substantial cost just for cremation.
There is.
You know, so it's not a simple like, yeah, you know, like we're going to build a bonfire in the backyard and scoop it up into an old coffee tin when we're all done.
You can't do that. I mean, people like, my dad's always talked about he wants a Viking funeral. That ain't happening. Not because I don't think it would be cool and pretty awesome. I think in Utah,
we're like the Jordan River. There's floating.
See that?
That's on fire. That's just going to end up in Utah Lake, and that's it.
Exactly. So yeah, I mean, these things would be cool, but the reality is, it's not likely going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if you spend enough money, you probably could get the permits to do something like that. But yeah, it is very costly. So just understanding what your actual plans for end of life are. I mean, I have my entire end of life already planned. So I have already looked into doing the natural burials. And so you're just placed in a shroud. There's no embalming fluid, and you are just buried in the ground, usually under a tree or something like that, where you are naturally helping the environment regrow.
Well, they have those ones where you're like a tree pod.
Yes.
And you become a tree.
Yeah. There are some great ways to do that. And so I have all this planned out. I know exactly, how it's going to happen, wills, trusts, financial plans. I have a DNR in place. All of these things for end of life are very important. If you don't have any of those, then it could add up the cost. So one of the reasons I have a DNR is, I don't want to be a long-time burden on my family. So if I am in an accident or a serious injury, or, genetically there's, problems that would keep me in a hospital for a long time through, emergency life-saving techniques, I don't want that, because that's a lot of extra cost. And so I have a DNR in place because I don't want to be that extra burden. And again, death comes to us all. So the idea of death is not scary, because it happens to everyone. Yeah, it's a bummer because I'm no longer there, but it's an important thing to think about. Wills, knowing where the financials, where the objects, where the money, where everything is going post-death. Who gets my shares in the business after all this is gone? Who gets what? Who gets my life insurance? Where does that life insurance have to go to? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of those things that if you don't have that in place, then any money that you have may end up in the government's hands. Objects that you have may end up with random people that you have no idea who they are, or with family members that you may not want them to have. If you don't have the right medical programs in place, then you may end up being an extra cost. You may be in a position where if you are not fully cognizant of what's going on, you may putting yourself in a greater burden of a life you never wanted, but because you didn't have anything in place, now you're living this lifestyle.
Well, and I think an important element is, thinking about a will and making sure that when you have a will designates the fact that your family, you actually get a choice to determine what, where, when, why, and how, rather than just giving that to Uncle Sam and he figuring out what to do with it and going like, who gets what? I'll take a little, and, rather than having some nobody cares individual there doing that and divvying out that estate, having something like a will protects you from that, so that it's not just whatever the government official decides they want to do with it.
Yeah, and it's other things too. So most people think, oh, wills are for rich people, trusts are for rich people. I don't have anything, I don't have an estate. Well, if you own a home, even if you owe a lot of money on it, you have an asset.
Yes.
And that home needs to be taken care of once you pass away. And so who's going to take care of the mortgage? Who's going to take care of making sure that house sells or goes on to an inheritor? All these things that you think, oh, I don't really have a lot. You really do.
Yeah.
And all of those things have to be thought out, because if you don't, then there's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of loss, and there's just a lot of, you're adding more grief to the situation than just your passing, because now there's a lot of extra stress.
So a pro in this is planning now prevents future family drama. The con is ignoring these steps can leave loved ones in really financial chaos. And so I don't really want kids fighting over dining room set, or, realizing that, this is supposed to go, and, you forgot to update your will, and all of a sudden that person that isn't in your life anymore gets your inheritance because you didn't update that. So it's like that stuff is realistically has happened. So it's important to make sure that those things are there, that you have clear intentions that are put in place, that way the right people, or what they call beneficiaries, is updated, and your end of life is at least a little more informed in the right direction.
Yeah, and for all this stuff, I mean, it sounds very complicated, very detailed, but I always recommend getting an attorney to help you out with this. There are a lot of attorneys who will do this pro bono. If you don't have a lot of money, they're not going to charge you a lot of money, but they want to make sure that you are taken care of in your end of life.
Yeah.
And so they will help you out. I think I've mentioned before some websites that do it pro bono. All they ask is for a donation so that they can keep doing it. Organizations like that exist all over.
Yeah.
And reach out to those to get that taken care of, because they will help you, and they will do it for a very inexpensive price. You can even go to LegalZoom and get that taken care of for an inexpensive price and have it all reviewed. Yeah. I would recommend actually talking to an attorney instead of LegalZoom for something like this. But all these things are in place to help you, and there are people who genuinely do want to help you through all this process, because they see what happens if it's not done correctly, and they will go out of their way to help people to make sure that doesn't happen. There are really people out there that do that.
I'm going to consult my Reddit forum, I think. Just what's the best way to do this, and what should I say on my will?
Yeah, don't go to Reddit for this advice.
I get a whole bunch of people that chime in and give me some good advice, most not.
Yeah, don't go to Reddit. Get a lawyer.
All right, Legacy Builders, today's episode is all about what we leave behind for our loved ones. And let's be real, that starts with the financial choices we make today. That's why we're so excited to introduce the Financial Empowerment Membership, your ultimate guide to planning smarter, building stronger, and leaving a legacy that truly matters. With expert advice, simple tools, and step-by-step guidance, this membership helps you take control of your finances now so you can avoid those common inheritance pitfalls later. Whether it's getting your will in order, or setting up the right investments, or just learning how to make your money work harder for you, we've got you covered. Because leaving behind love and security is a lot better than leaving behind confusion and debt. Join the Financial Empowerment Membership today and start building the legacy your family deserves. Check out the link in our show notes to learn more. Now, back to the show. So, building that legacy. Legacies, I guess, a lot of people think about it like, oh, well, legacy, then it's like a trust. Is it a trust fund? Did you create a family trust and I'm going to get loads and loads of money, and that's it? And the reality is, usually it's pictures, and it literally isn't money. There's some, obviously that's part of the legacy, usually. But the intent is to pass on what you've put your heart and soul into, not the grandpa's bowling ball collection, like I mentioned earlier. But maybe if you're passionate about that, like grandpa was, then it's probably your best bet.
There you go.
But if let's say, for example, you have something that you've been doing your whole life, and you passed that, kind of rite of passage onto a younger person in your family, and you say, like, man, these are the tools that I used for that. Like my grandpa is a good example of that. When he passed away, he had a whole workshop worth of like carpentry tools, and in the process, when he passed away, like that was something where there wasn't really anybody else in the family that needed or could use them. So my dad and me, we got a lot of those carpentry tools. So some of them, I don't even know what to do with it. I'm like, what is this thing? But I have to YouTube it. And I was like, he wouldn't have known how to do the YouTube thing. He'd have just been like, this is what you do, son. Yeah. But it's those things. It's so many more things. It's not just memories. It's the skills that they've acquired, the traditions that they've built. So yeah, like if you just look at like some monetary benefit because your grandparent passed away, one, that's really shallow. I don't doubt there's people out there that are like that. They're like, thank God, what do I get? But your thoughts as that person who wants to leave that legacy, I don't want it to just be a cash check. I want it to be something that has lasting value that maybe they get to instill in the next generation after, way, way beyond me. Yeah. So if I can have that kind of ripple in my effort, then that's tremendous.
Yeah. One of the best ways that I've ever learned how to do this is something called a family constitution. Now, this is something that's cool. That is not very common in the U.S., but throughout Europe, it actually is very common. I saw one where it was a company that helped families create family constitutions, and they would create a 75-page document
Dear Lord.
For a family constitution. Again, and this was in Europe. In Europe, where there's a lot of old money, this is normal practice to have a family constitution. The family constitution goes through, this is what we as a family believe. This is what we want to instill in our family. It goes through inheritance practices. So if someone's not living up to the lifestyle that you expect, they are taken out of the inheritance process. I mean, these are very, very complicated processes and documents. And then you have, on the other side in the U.S., probably more simplified versions of these. They're becoming more common as there is more wealth being generated and passed on in each subsequent generation. But they are from as simple as a plaque on the wall that just has your top 10 points of view. And so it just lists out, we believe in family.
Yeah.
We believe in God. Whatever it ends up being, that it can be as simple as something like that to something as complex as an actual document that you pass down to future generations. This is what we as a family stand for. This is what I as a person hoped to pass on to my children, my grandchildren, and on down the road. And so writing out a family constitution is a great and amazing way to be able to pass on what you feel is important to future generations.
I think of like the word, because the word is emancipate, but instead of emancipate, you defect because you are dropping your constitutional rights. You're like,
something like that.
Can I defect to this household over here? You're like, oh, come on.
But yeah, and so doing something like this, and then and writing your history. These are great ways to pass on a lot of that value, and that's how you create a legacy.
Yeah, I mean, it's the stories, it's the lessons. There's loving moments that you have more of an opportunity to leave behind that is far more of a lasting impression than any kind of money. Money absolutely matters, but money is such a fluid part of it that you're going to see that legacy is less about your bank account and more about the life that you lived with your family.
Yeah.
So here's a pro. Thoughtful planning creates emotional and financial security for loved ones. Okay, so I'm thinking of others in my family. Yeah. But a con is it's easy to focus only on the dollars and forget the deeper impact of what a legacy actually truly is, or the identity of that. But, hopefully the idea is that your grandkids don't just want your money. It's good. Usually I would hope that my grandkids want my money when I'm actually there having a conversation with them. It's the bank of grandma and grandpa now. But I want them to remember the time that they got to see me make the world's worst pancakes. I'm not a pancake maker. I can make pancakes. I'm not a pancake maker. I can make spaghetti to, everyone else. You'll love it. But pancakes or baking. You're a baker.
Yeah.
I can't bake to save my life. So I think what's kind of an interesting thing is this is something my grandmother did that I didn't recognize until later. It wasn't really necessarily to anyone, but on certain heirlooms that I received from my grandmother in tucked behind a picture frame, okay? Or inside of something like with a pile of recipes, okay? There was letters and notes written, like things that were just encouragement, things and like I don't know if I necessarily had the best I didn't have the best relationship with my grandmother, but it was interesting to see like these indirect things, stories, articles that, highlight the life that they lived and the like little positive things and elements and notes and letters all over everything that every one of us kids got. So it was really kind of cool because that wasn't a monetary thing. That wasn't a money thing. Like I can't be like, how much do I get for this kind of thing? I cherish that item more now because I know a piece of the history behind why that exists. Yeah. And that's a really cool thing to really take away. You can't put a price tag on that, So here's some closing thoughts. Start early because your financial decisions now build the foundation for later. To avoid pitfalls, get a will. It's not difficult. It's not overwhelming. It's not for the rich people. It's for every people. Mm-hmm. Keep beneficiaries updated. So if you break up with somebody, let's make sure they're not in the will, okay? And plan for end of life costs because it's really stupid expensive. And the last thing I want to do as that legacy is to leave that bill for my loved ones. Remember, your legacy is more than just money. It's the love and lessons that you leave behind. So planning for the end isn't about being morbid or anything like that. It's about ensuring the people you care about most are supported and they're secure and maybe even smiling when they think of you. So go, plant that financial seed or tree and update that will and maybe teach your grandkids how to make actual pancakes, just in case.
Just in case.
Time for Jokes with Joe.
All right, here we go. A little bit of a light mood for a darker topic today.
Oh, thank you. We're going to turn it around. I like this. All right.
So what do you call a shoe made from a banana peel?
I don't know.
A slipper.
I think that one's worse than the last one.
These are dad jokes. They are great dad
jokes. They're intentionally terrible.
But that's exactly what it is. You put on that banana and it is a slipper.
That's true. I'm never going to put a banana on my feet. That's uncomfortable and slippery.
Yeah. Well, that's why they call it a slipper.
We've reached the end of our show for the day. Thanks for listening and watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Life's too short, so keep laughing and learning. And remember, idiots have way more fun.
Check your shoes.